Welcome to Cooking with Gerry, an early morning breakfast. So I didn't go through the whole process with this video segment, but please stay tuned because there's leftovers that we'll use for the next meal. I want to explain what we have this morning. In my saucepan, I put some water and about half a teaspoon of pink salt. Then I put Kaniwa seed and I let that cook for about 5 minutes because I think it takes longer than the brown rice to cook. So after those 5 minutes, I put brown rice and 2 different kinds of raw peanuts. I had washed and rinsed the rice and the peanuts, but the Kaniwa seed is very small and it falls through the holes of my strainer unless I soak it overnight, which I didn't because I didn't plan for this breakfast last night. So the 5 minutes with the Kaniwa seed cooking, and then 10 minutes with the brown rice and the raw peanuts cooking, and the heat was as low as possible to minimize the damage caused by cooking, but to still have a rolling boil. So after those 15 minutes, I added some celery and carrots that I had washed, and I peeled the carrot and I cut into small pieces. They went in for the last 10 minutes of cooking. Then I turned off the heat. I also added 2 tablespoons of virgin coconut oil into the water during the cooking process. Then when the heat was off, 1 tablespoon of salted butter, a small handful of dried fruit that I have in a bag mixed together of cranberries, yellow raisins, and purple raisins, and I also put 2 small rings of dried pineapple that I broke apart with my fingers, but you can also use scissors to cut those pineapple rings. And before those went in, I washed them. Very important to wash dried fruit, nuts, seeds, beans. So that went together and that sat for about 10 minutes. And then I served it on my plate, and then I added about 8 almonds and 2 Brazil nuts that I washed and then cut into smaller pieces. And I added half of an avocado. So let me show you. I'll come closer. So here you can see the grain and the seed with the veggies and the dried fruit. And you probably can't see peanuts and almonds and Brazil nuts and the avocado. So a decent breakfast, fairly balanced, fairly high in the sugar content with the rice and the seed and the vegetables, but balanced with the avocado, the peanuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, and the coconut oil and the butter, and then I also drizzled a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. So that's today's breakfast, and please stay tuned because I want to do something with the leftovers, and that cooking process we can do together because it won't be so early and I won't be a risk of waking up the neighbors. So we'll be back real soon. Welcome back. We're going to be using the leftovers from this morning's meal. So let's get started. I'm going to put the fire on, low heat. And I have 1 tablespoon of salted butter that's going to melt very quickly. Here I have 2 eggs that I'm going to beat. And the leftovers, it's important that the leftovers aren't cold. If you pull them directly out of the fridge, it's going to be cold and it'll take longer to cook. So if you can, take them out of the fridge a little bit beforehand, or you can heat them up if you have a microwave or in a frying pan. These have been sitting on my shelf since this morning, so they are warm because it's about 35 degrees outside and hot and humid. So that's going in the eggs, and I also have chopped into very small pieces half of a sweet red pepper. I don't need this anymore. So I'm going to put the peppers also into the bowl. And we just mix. Trying to get the egg to kind of touch everything. And a little bit of salt. Maybe half a teaspoon of pink salt. And I am now going to add a little bit of virgin olive oil, about a tablespoon. I'm going to mix the butter and the olive oil. And going to pour the egg mixture into the frying pan. My handy dandy spatula cleans everything nice so that there's minimal waste. Very useful tool in the kitchen. This one I have right now I've had for almost 5 years. So it might be a bit expensive to get the good one, but the good ones last a long time. I recommend you don't put this in the dishwasher. If it's a plastic handle, it's probably okay, but still better to hand wash the spatulas to prolong their life. So I just spread everything out in the frying pan, and I'm going to cover it, and it'll take a few minutes to cook. Little piece of egg on my board. And while that's cooking, I got some great news. There's another variety show after this segment. We built a wood shelf this morning. The owner upstairs has a plant nursery, and she had asked me to use some of the old wood that's piled up in a little storage area. So we built that this morning with the variety show, and I brought it upstairs about half an hour ago, and it's already being used. And she has 3 big vases on the top shelf, and it was nice to know that the extra support I gave to that top shelf, it's supporting those heavy plants. The ones on the end, fairly easy because they have the legs to support, but the one in the middle is the one I was concerned about. But the shelving, the wood is not bulging, buckling, whatever word you want to use. So that's good news, so stay tuned for that. And I wanted to mention from this morning, what I didn't say is when you are cooking quinoa or amaranth or Kaniwa are the 3 seeds I use, and I also use whole grain wheat and whole grain rice. You have a certain amount of water that you need to add, usually 2 to 1. 2 parts water, 1 part of grain or seed. But if you're going to put other items in there that will also absorb water, you need to put more than that 2 parts of water. The peanuts from this morning, they absorb the water, as well as the dried fruit, the cranberries and the raisins. So I put a bit of extra water. And if you want to do something like this, but in the oven, then also you need more water because the grains and the seeds will dry out a little bit in the oven. This kind of cooking method, there's a lot of moisture that stays contained, so you wouldn't need the extra water if you're doing a pancake or I'll call this an omelette, although it's got more other stuff than egg. So that's what I wanted to mention. If you add too much water and you find at the end that it's too liquidy, what I do sometimes, I will add chia seed at the end, which will absorb a lot of water. Or I'll also use some powder, either a nut powder, a seed powder, or a root powder. And that will also absorb the liquid, and it'll increase the nutritional value of that meal by having added that kind of powder. Now, the whatever is in the powder, it's better to eat in its original form, but it's better also to have that powder than to not have it, because it gives you a little bit of extra nutrition, and it can add a bit of flavor depending on which powder you have. Many people have those protein powders. They have become very popular in the past 20 years or so, maybe 30 years, maybe longer, I don't know. I started using protein powder when I was about 20. Doing a lot of exercise with a competitive sport and a lot of weight training, I started using protein powders. But recently, because I'm not lifting heavy weights anymore and putting that kind of demand on my body, I believe I get enough protein from the food I eat. So let's continue to cook for another few minutes. I would also like to talk about something else. I watched a video this morning, YouTube, that had Sadhguru, Sadhguru. He's a present day guru. He's a superstar. He's got lots of YouTube videos, lots of books. If you want to learn about the Eastern philosophy, he gives lots of great lessons. You just have to invest the time either to read or watch his videos. And the one video I watched this morning, he spoke about mental illness and how the food we eat plays a very big impact on mental illness and the health of the body. If you can understand the concept that what you're eating is eventually turning into you, then at least for me it's much easier to make healthier food choices rather than going for the quick and easy like French fries, a fast food burger, fried chicken, pizza. I am able to take the time to prepare my meals. I'm very fortunate that way. I have a kitchen, and I have found excuse me, certain food items that I think are the healthiest, and so I prepare every single meal that I eat. It's very rare that I will eat a meal that someone else has prepared. Mental illness. He explains that the food that we're eating also affects our body on the cellular level, and it helps with neuron regeneration, which is really important. He explained that he recently had some kind of test, I don't remember, to measure the age of his cells. So he is 25 years old as far as the health of his cells. I don't know how old he is. I'm going to guess mid-70s. But because he eats all natural food and he's very conscious of what else he does in his life. Obviously, he's been doing yoga for a long time. Meditation, that helps a lot because you get a large portion of your day in the rest and digest phase compared to the fight or flight phase. which keeps the body's adrenaline rushing, which is not so good for overall health. It's good for the moment. Way back when, if you can imagine living in caves, the fight or flight response was very effective if there was a threat by way of another caveman who wants your cave because it's bigger and nicer and there's a great spot for a fireplace, or because you're running away from a big animal that is also hungry. So incorporating a meditation and some kind of relaxation practice every day will help you spend more of your day in the rest and digest phase. Cellular regeneration is critical for overall health. If you're eating a lot of junk food, or fast food or sugar, that's going to affect your body. Not only as you might gain weight, but also on the most important cellular level. He also talks about colon health, and I spoke about this recently in a video. You want everything to move through you fairly quickly, because at the end product it's waste, it's toxic. If it's taking too long to go through your body because you're not eating enough of the proper foods, then your body is holding on to that waste product for longer than it should, and that's going to affect your health. You want to have as much as possible the fiber, the plant diet, and minimize processed foods, prepackaged foods, pre-cooked. He also speaks about many people having food on the shelf for 1 or 2 months, the shelf life it's called, and sometimes there's food that can last for 6 months or a year or 2 years. That's not the best food, because the only way it can last that long is if it's been processed and if it's got enough preservatives in it to keep it edible and not spoil. So he spoke about not eating food that's been cooked more than an hour and a half ago. Now I do break that rule regularly. This, for example, I cooked it this morning, which was about 5 hours ago. So I am breaking that rule, but it's just the way I choose to make my life easier and to save on energy and gas and a little bit of time. And the important thing is it's whole food. What we made this morning is whole food. And even though it was sitting on my shelf for 5 hours, it's whole food. Not the best, but better than anything that has a shelf life of 1 or 2 months or years. Another important thing about colon health is your immune system, which a lot of it, I just got a whiff of that red pepper, smells great. A lot of your immune system is in your colon, your large intestine. And if you aren't able to regularly clean out the intestine, your immune system will also be weakened. And also with the unhealthy food, you're going to suffer from immune system weakness. So I'm going to flip. I just don't want the water to fall into the omelette at this point, because now I'm not going to flip it. It's far too fragile. So I'm cutting it down the middle, and I'm cutting it into quarters. And let me show you one technique I use. This bowl had the red peppers. I remove one wedge just to give myself a little bit of space to be able to flip. So I flip one, I flip another one, and then the third one. Much easier to flip when you have that little bit of extra space. And then this one goes back in, it broke a little bit. And that's almost done, less than 2 minutes, and it'll be done. The red pepper is not going to be completely cooked, which for me is fine, but I know some people need that red pepper to be a lot more cooked to be able to digest it properly. And if you're one of those people, I recommend you cook it a little bit beforehand and then add it to the eggs. And one more thing. No, that was everything. Yep. So, a bit of information, and as I suggested, invest some time watching one of his videos, or he's got lots of books. He's done many great things in his life and has helped our planet become a much happier and more peaceful place. Sadhguru, Sadhguru. And I don't think you need to see the end of it. Oh, but maybe you want to see what it looks like. So I'm going to open the lid. Now it's okay for the water because the flip has happened. I'm going to come to the camera and I'll show you. It looks great. So there's today's lunch using leftovers and some fresh eggs and fresh red peppers. And now it's time for the variety show. Enjoy us making a wooden shelf. A new project for the variety show. There is a plant nursery upstairs on the main level, and the owner needs more shelves to put her plants. So here are the main pieces for the shelf using recycled wood. These long pieces are 1.2 meters. They were part of an old fence, and I made them into these rectangular containers to hold my little vegetable plants while they were still in their small cups. And these pieces were used as part of a cement pour. So we're going to see what we can do to build a shelf using these pieces and other random recycled pieces. And I'll show you when we're part way through. Alright, about halfway done. It's the toughest half and I have to use nails. I really much prefer to use screws because it's more precise and less noise. But everything came together so far so good. I am just going to reinforce. I also need to put some cross beams because it's way too wiggly. And we'll come back one last time to show you the finished product. Shelving unit is done. I have one more nail to put in. I wanted to show you this little trick if you don't know. I have a drill with a small diameter drill bit, and you can see that it's not quite as long as the nail. So the nail will still have about 5 centimeters of undrilled wood to go through, which will hold it in place. Not the best system, but it works, and as I said before, much better with screws. So here I have drilled the hole, and I'm going to put the nail in. I don't know how well you can see it. And it goes into about there, and then the rest of it is going to be undrilled wood. And so that's one way to make it easier and to minimize all the bent nails you might get if you're hammering in all the way. So excuse, there's going to be a bit of noise. And there it is. So I'm going to turn it around because that was the face that will be against the wall. And you can see it's sturdy. I have two crisscross. In the middle I just put a wire. I have a diagonal support here and also on this side. And I put reinforcement underneath here because the idea is to put plants on it. And if you have a plant with the vase and the dirt and the water, it's kind of heavy. So that's hopefully going to be strong enough. Here I didn't do it. I used two thicker pieces on the bottom. I don't know if you can see it. And so now I'm going to bring this upstairs and the owner will put some plants on it.